like learn a valuable skill, like learn something, become like, go do networking, like learn how to computers, learn something like, or maintenance, learn how to work on aircraft, learn how to work on diesel engines, electricians, whatever, go get a skill. I think that is a really great thing. If you're just trying to get out, if you just want money for college, if you just want to do something with your life that, achieves a higher purpose, those are the things you should do. If you want to learn about like leadership and how to deal with a little bit more adversity, if you want to feel like a soldier, join the infantry.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned.
I think that's a valuable goal. I talked to my girlfriend about this. Like, we listened to a thing, Mike Rowe, he has a show, like a podcast.
Oh, yeah, okay. I've heard of him.
The way I heard it, I think is what he calls it. And he had a Memorial Day one, and we listened to it. We were on a trip this weekend, and we listened to it together. And one of the comments from a gentleman that was on there, a guy named Whittle, I think, was saying that, part of why the boomer generation is so like spoiled and like doesn't understand is like they're the greatest generation, as they're called, like came back from the war and didn't talk about the war and didn't talk about the hard times and the bad times, like they kind of like kept it from their children, because that generation, went through the Great Depression and then, had to fight in, the Second World War. And they consider, that guy considered it like a disservice to the boomers for not telling them what the world was really like, and kind of putting them in a kind of swaddling in lies and just
Sure,
like bubble wrap, I guess. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had I'm very open about the war. I think veterans should talk about it. So feel free, man.
yeah. And then, that's a good point. And then the next generation maybe went to Vietnam with a kind of pie in the sky assumption of what war's like and not a real picture. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I understand, everybody has different experiences. If someone, I've had a few guys, that don't want to come on, and I understand. I mean, it's not as glamorous as people think it is, and sometimes people just don't want to talk about it.
Right.
So that's fine. But yeah. So yeah, today we got Gruntpa here. So is it Gruntpa or Gruntpa, or how do you pronounce it?
Yeah. I had
you just
no, there's a kid.
I
didn't even make it up. Like, I had some kid make fun of me, like some like I guess it's Gen Z. I'm technically a millennial, so I think it was some Gen Z like was making fun of me because I had posted a picture of myself in Iraq, and I'm wearing like the ACU, like it looks like concrete. It's
right.
like it's the worst camouflage pattern ever, and I was wearing like a Interceptor body armor, which is like really old school and crappy. And anyway, he said something about like, like first he made fun of the collar, because back then we had to wear what they call like a cowboy collar, which I had like rolled mine down, but it was like, it was rancid. I mean, it was black. I'd never washed that thing. It was disgusting. And he first like made fun of like how rancid and gross that collar was, and then called me a grandpa, which I thought that was like very funny. And so I took that as like a handle.
Right.
But the problem is then now everybody thinks I'm old.
Right.
And I think I like kind of tweet like an old person. Like, I think I tend to use like the King's English. I'll make some tweets that like kind of use like the internet patois or whatever. But I try to elevate my style occasionally. and I think that it's convinced too many people that I'm like an old person. Like I don't even hit 40, but like you know, but in like army years, I mean, I would have if I'd have stayed in, which I didn't. Um, I'd have been getting out sometime around now. Like all the buddies that enlisted with me are about to get out, or
Mm-hmm.
they're at the twilight of their careers. So kind of makes sense, but it doesn't. Like it's just a funny name.
Kind of a millennial with boomer tendencies.
Yeah, I've been accused of that a lot actually. So that fits. It's not just in the name.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good place to be. Yeah. So what was kind of your motivation for getting in, for joining? What's
I've
what's
talked about this
what's
a
kind of
few
big for the
times.
listener? What's kind of your big picture background? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, big picture. I went to a really small town high school. I grew up like very very country, um, like almost Braxton level country. Like a lot of people know Braxton now. Like 45 minutes from high school, and graduated with like 30 or 48 people. Um, really didn't, I just want to get the hell out. Like I was tired of being kind of stuck on the farm, so to speak. I wanted to see a big city, and went out to it, and just it didn't really jive. Like I knew I was smart enough to go to a good college, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Through a lot of laziness and didn't know what I wanted to do, and always wanted to be a soldier, but I'd gotten like a little stupid with politics as a younger person. Like, and really, like I've always had a pretty hefty distaste of the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so like joining the army just seemed like kind of like a stupid move. And then yeah, we invaded Afghanistan after September 11th, and I like bizarrely like kind of protested it. Um, this is like again, like I was a really messed up kid, but went to went to college, was in like a bigger town than I was used to, and then the Iraq War kicked off. And I'll just be honest, like I fell for the propaganda. Plus, I don't know, it's
Hmm.
pretty nihilistic. It didn't really matter to me what the war was about or not. Like it just seemed like something I needed to do. It seemed like
Hmm.
something I wanted to be a part of. Like I didn't think that there would be another war come around in my generation, in my lifetime. And it was just that was going to be my chance. If I wanted to be a soldier and see what war was like, I had to enlist.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I ended up in a recruiter station in Denton, Texas.
So you, let's see if that was because obviously right after 9/11 they were just overwhelmed with people.
Hmm.
Had it kind of died down to the point where they were more, because right after 9/11 they could pick and choose whoever they wanted.
I think that's true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I imagine that that's how that went. Like they when I went, they were pretty still hungry. I mean, they were hungry for recruits. I think
Sure.
that the war was on. They would take just about anybody, and I think that included me.
Yeah.
Like I'd went in like my first day, and I was like, I'm ready to sign up for the army in a month, and they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, in a month. In a month, I'll sign. And they're like, dude, just tell us you smoke pot. And I was like, no, no, of course I don't smoke pot. Like, I'll just sign in a month. And they're like, whatever, bro. Like this. So like, I hung out with them for like a month and made friends with my recruiter. He was actually a really cool guy. Like everybody's got these bad recruiter stories. I don't. I had a great recruiter. He died in the war.
Mm.
Um, his name was Isaias Santos. He's from Puerto Rico, and he was an
Hmm.
infantryman when I met him. So, but he didn't have a CIB. He wasn't in the war as an infantryman. He had just been in like an infantry unit, and then became a recruiter. Then the war kicked off, so he was pretty disgruntled about it all. But when I met him, he was putting in a warrant officer packet. He wanted to
Hmm.
fly Apaches, and
Sure.
so yeah, I mean, he was getting ready for trying to get into warrant officer school. I was trying to get in shape because I had originally tried to join to get a ranger contract, and then those contracts were super rare. They were being very picky, and so like I had met all the requirements, but they told me that I would be in the delayed entry program for like a year and a half, and I was afraid the
Mm.
war would end. Like,
Right. Right.
stupid me. Had I known, I might have waited. But one of the things they had trouble filling was is they had started this. They called them like SF babies, and what they were doing is they were recruiting special forces candidates directly off the streets. And so
Hmm.
you had to go through like a ton of crap ahead of time. And so like my recruiter's like, don't be a dumbass. Like, why do you want to go be a ranger? You can be a Green Beret. And I was like, I just want to be a ranger. I mean, I really didn't. I wanted to be a Green Beret, but I didn't like. It just didn't seem like I knew what they did. Like my brother had been in the army, and he had told me what Green Berets do, what Rangers did, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking be a ranger. I mean, I still want to be a ranger. Like to me, like that is just like there's the finest light infantry in the world. Like that just nothing beats that.
Right.
So yeah, I tried for that. I wanted it a year and a half. So they said, go be this SF baby. And the big thing for me was I had to be at least airborne. Like I'd already fallen under the some people would call it an illusion, but I had already fallen under the spell that like if a man's gonna jump out of an airplane, he's already somewhat ready to face death. Like he
Right.
doesn't mind at least that level of danger. Regardless, it's not physically hard, but like that mental dedication is a little bit better, and that they should be better soldiers. Now I
Mm.
still firmly believe that and can talk about that at length, but I had that knowledge, and this SF baby curriculum ensured that I had a slot for airborne school, which was good enough for me because in my mind at that time I wasn't sure if I could be a Green Beret. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't know myself very well, but I was like, at a minimum I can be airborne infantry, and that'd be good enough for me, which is good because that's where I ended up. um, like it's a whole long story, but I mean I'm sure we'll get there. But yeah, I signed up in Denton. I had to still do delayed entry program. I did like 9 months, and so did a little less partying, a little bit more running. To be in this program back then, I had to interview with a full bird colonel.
Mm.
So like as a civilian, I had to talk to this full bird colonel, and I had to attain the rank of E3 at enlistment, which meant like I had to take all these correspondence courses. I had to pass, like I had to be able to like march and do like drill and ceremony. It was a very bizarre
Hmm.
thing. Like when I signed my papers, like there was like a dude that basically was like, what is this rank? And what is that rank? And like he was like, stand up, do an about face, like do a left face, like do, and it was just all this weird shit. And then, again, like I took those correspondence courses like on land nav and
Mm-hmm.
just all kinds of weird stuff. And so like, yeah, when I signed up, I was automatically an E3, like a private first class, which is good too because I got more money.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So
so yeah,
basically,
I
they just
didn't.
wanted. They were saying if you're going to be this level of special soldier, special forces, we want you to demonstrate some initiative and be
I
worth what
mean,
we're going to put
not.
into you.
I think that's probably what they told me.
Okay.
Like the
Okay.
truth, you know what I mean. The truth is, to be on an SF team, you have to be an NCO. And in order for you to make rank fast enough, you have to start as an E3. Like they just
Oh,
had to
I
start you
see.
as an E3 because like they were gonna increase your rank to E4 somewhere in the middle of the qualification course for special forces, and then right before you hit the team, they're gonna throw sergeant stripes on you.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
because being an E5 Green Beret, I mean that was kind of bizarre. Most Green Berets come in as like promotable E5s, E6s, E7s, sergeants, sergeant first classes. So yeah, being a lower end sergeant would have been that's the minimum you could be. So they had
Okay.
they had to drag me up starting out because otherwise you don't catch enough promotions, I think,
Right. You'd
during
have to
basic
hang out and do
training
something
and
else before you get to
right,
that. Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Huh. Interesting.
But it was more money, so I took it.
Yeah.
Not a
And
lot more
cooler.
money,
I
but
mean, yeah. I mean, at that age, especially, you don't want to
oh, I thought
wash
it was
dishes or
awesome.
peel potatoes. Yeah. You're here
But you
to.
know what? A private's a private. I mean, what you find out when you get there is like anybody that's not a sergeant is It's kind of the same. I mean, that as a specialist, there's a little bit of privilege with it, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, if you're a PFC, or an E1 or an E2, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. Like, yours is a private.
Right.
Like, yeah, they don't care. Like, you're still peeling potatoes or doing whatever they tell you to do. It sucks.
Right.
Being private's awful, but at least the pay was better. Like I said.
Yeah. So yeah, so you deployed both to Iraq and Afghanistan, correct?
It did, yeah.
What
But
what was
they were
Go
all
ahead.
short. Well, I was gonna say,
Okay.
yeah, they were all short. So like I only did like 2 total years in Iraq and Afghanistan together. They
Oh,
were all
okay.
very short tours.
Was that normal for the time? That length of
No,
tour?
not
Oh,
at
okay.
all. Not at all normal. It's very bizarre.
Huh.
Um, so the 82nd is a weird unit. Like, I'm probably gonna catch a lot of hell for this because I already talked about the 82nd being awesome all the time and people hate it. But
Right.
they really So other units in the military do like what we used to call like DRF, and I think they've called it like DRB and DRF, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's really about readiness. So like the military, like the U.S. government, the Department of Defense maintains certain units on alert at all times.
Okay.
Now I've had a lot of units, like I've had other people when I talk about the 82nd being on like DRF. I've had a lot of be like, "Oh, we did that too," and usually, like you find out, yeah, they did it. Like they were on this status for alert. They were on it for like, I don't know, maybe a month or two, a couple months. Maybe it rotated through one brigade for a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
but the 82nd like is literally some form of DRF all the time. And so the DRF settings, like the closer you are to one, the the more restrictions you have. To where like one, you can't drink, you have to answer your phone when it rings, you have to be showing up to formation, I think within like 2 hours. There's
Mm.
no passes outside of 200 miles. Like it is like locked down. And we were on
Right.
that quite a bit. And if you weren't on DRF 1, you were on like DRF 3 or DRF 5, where I think you can like finally go on leave and shit. But even then, you get called back. And so, because of that kind of status and readiness that the 82nd just maintains, I caught a lot of short notice deployments. So back then, most units knew for like a year when they were going out.
Mm-hmm.
Every deployment I was on was a surprise. Like was within, I don't know, I guess like 3 months. Like
Mm-hmm.
notice. The shortest notice we got, we were back for 6 days, and we were sent back again.
Oh,
So
wow.
we weren't really even back before
Right.
we found out we had to go again. So yeah, I mean the Afghanistan one was like extremely short. It was only for 6 months. It really was not anything. I mean, I don't like to say that it was nothing, but it just wasn't really eventful for me. For my unit,
Okay. Sure.
it was a little bit, but yeah. And then the Iraq ones were pretty eventful. But yeah, it was only those three.
Yeah, it's interesting because in at least in my mind, I tend to like blur Iraq and Afghanistan, not having obviously been in either. Um, just like it's the same situation, but for you having been in both, and everyone's experience is different, but having been in both to contrast the two, that's kind of interesting just to see the like you're saying one was eventful and the other one wasn't. You know, was the mission the same at both for you
No,
or
no, none of them really were the same. Like,
okay?
so yeah, the Afghanistan mission was really just to support the elections. Like the first one was we had to build our own fob and
Mm,
establish our own small like battalion. Well, it wasn't even really a battalion. Like we had half a battalion, but it was considered a battalion like camp
okay.
or like small outpost. And that was in Maidan Shar, Afghanistan. So that's like southwest of Kabul and northeast of Ghazni,
Okay.
if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, it's on. There's only one road in Afghanistan, like one major road, like what they call like a highway.
Okay.
and it's in this big circle. It's called like the Ring Road, I think. And it's like Route 1 or something. Um, so it's what we don't, what we consider to be like the only paved major highway, interstate, whatever. And so we were, we flew into to Biop, or not Biop. What am I thinking? That's Baghdad. No, we flew into Bagram, and I went advanced party, which is like first. Like the rest of my unit was behind me, and I went in, drew some gear, drew some vehicles, and then went and sat and babysitted these engineers that were building our fob. Like they had already been there. Like it was like apocalypse now. Like I showed up and there's these dudes like just living in dirt, like running bulldozers all day, like trying to build this place up. Like filthy, dirty. Everything they had, all their weapons were trashed and dirty.
Right.
Hung out with those dudes, like while they started building it, started trying to get us set up. Ended up trading like I think it was a carton of cigarettes for like the largest pile of I don't think how to say this. It is the largest pile of like porno magazines I've ever seen. Like I traded a carton of cigarettes for something like 25 pounds
Holy
of
cow.
of these girly mags because I knew what a commodity it was going to be. Like these guys were getting out of there, they were going back home or whatever, and like
Gotcha.
they had assembled all of their collection of these magazines, which were like against General Order number 1, I think.
Oh, okay.
Which you weren't supposed to have any of this stuff, but of
Right.
course, like nobody cared. And so yeah, I went and I traded for this because I knew so when my unit got there, I kind of had opened up like a library, like letting people like check these things out for cigarettes and dip and all kinds of other like kind of like a prison trading system. But yeah, I mean, I sat with them, babysit that, and then when the main unit came, we got 2 companies attached to us plus our scouts. Our other companies went to Kandahar, so like we were pretty limited in like who we had there. Like we had I want to say we had Bravo Company and Delta Company. I think that's right. Yeah, that's right. And then we had a whole bunch of little outposts. Like we had one out at like this UN compound where we'd keep like a platoon by itself. Like, and really, we just supported the elections. We just bribed the right officials. Like, tried to make sure that peace was like kept. There was a tactical human team. So like at this point, I should point out like I'm not actually being an infantryman. I was working in our S2 section, which is like a whole other story of how I ended up
Okay,
there.
sure.
But
That's
like I
intel,
worked
isn't it?
in this, yeah, it's
S2?
intel, and so I was,
Okay.
yeah, and it was the battalion level. Um, so yeah, I was working in that section as an infantryman, and I was hating it because like I was in the infantry and I wasn't being in the infantry, and so like we got this tactical human team, and it was led by like this really brilliant sergeant, but it was just full of misfits. Like the other 2 people on that team were just like, I mean, they were ate the fuck up, and so um, the S2, which is like the actual like the captain that runs the intel section, like him, and then the other platoon leaders were like, let's put this guy with them. Like he'll keep them from doing dumb shit. And so like I went out with them a lot. Um, and also just like told the platoon leaders like, hey, if you'll take me out, I'll write up all your intelligence debriefs and I'll do all the things that like you don't want to do.
Right.
So like I just like weaseled my way onto patrols, but I didn't do anything. Like the actual dudes on the line like probably thought I was a huge nerd, because like they were out there like they probably didn't ever want to go on patrol anymore. And here
Right.
I was like trying to volunteer, and we had a vehicle, and but like of course like this vehicle we didn't have like a crew served weapon for it because it was the tactical human team. Like nobody's gonna give them like a machine gun, and
Mm-hmm.
so like I would like sit in the turret on these patrols, with just like my M4. I was such a nerd. Like I look back now, and it's like very cringy, but yeah, I mean it was an easy deployment for me. Like we got rocketed. There were like a few attacks and stuff. But they were like really like half-assed, and
Sure.
other people in my battalion did see some action. I don't mean to denigrate them, but like it wasn't widespread.
Sure.
It wasn't for us it wasn't a big deal. The guys in the west had it way worse. Like we took some casualties out west, but like where I was, yeah, it was really easy. Like Afghanistan was really mild back then, which was, I want to say like 2005. Yeah, summer to fall 2005.
Sure,
So
it's
it was only like 6 months.
not like every patrol you had to have a mine team or something. It was okay. Yeah, yeah.
We were lucky to have a road. I mean, and they didn't, in that
Right.
in that phase of Afghanistan, um, they really hadn't up. They weren't really doing IEDs. Like IEDs, I
Okay.
think had started in Iraq, but like that tactic really hadn't progressed very much, and wasn't widespread in Afghanistan. I may be wrong. I mean, again, because at that point I had not been to Iraq, but I
Hmm.
just know that like we had one ambush where I actually went and helped do like the cleanup, where one of our units got hit, and the Afghanis had actually put 120s, which are like these big artillery shells. They had put them in the road, or near the road, but I guess didn't understand the standoff like that they needed to be.
Oh no.
Or maybe they didn't tamp the charge. I don't know what happened. All I know is that like I ended up having to like fingerprint like two dead bodies because like I was the only one that knew how to do fingerprints because I used to do all the clearances for so like yeah, like
Hmm.
we went and did fingerprints on these dudes, and yeah, they killed themselves. Like, I mean, as far as we could tell, like, I mean, they were shot, but the way that they had like bled or something, like it didn't look like they'd killed themselves. Like they had
Sure.
essentially set off these 120s, caused like pretty limited damage. I mean, rung the bells of all the dudes that were in the affected area,
Sure.
um, but yeah, that was like the only time I think that we saw like IEDs, and those weren't technically. I mean, I guess they're improvised because their 120s are meant to be fired,
Hmm.
but and then yeah, rockets. Occasional small arms, but it was a pretty quiet and peaceful time. Like
Hmm.
it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Huh. And then
And
Iraq was kind of the opposite, or just different, or
it
what
was
was
it
the?
was the opposite and different. So,
Yeah.
so we got back from Afghanistan, and by this point, like we jumped this chronology, but like I talked earlier about the SF baby. Like by this point,
Oh yeah.
I've been kicked clear out of there for underage drinking.
Oh.
Um, so like I'd gotten kicked out, but because I'd made selection, they let me pick the unit that I wanted to be in. Like I got to put in I think it's a 4187. I don't remember now. I've been out for a long time, but I got to put in for my preferred unit duty station. And because I'd already gotten an apartment and I'd gotten married, and had a wife in Fayetteville, like I was like, I want to go to the 82nd. Like, so yeah, they sent me to the 82nd. And so, yeah, I was there for a while, had went to a couple different companies, went to S2, um, got back from Afghanistan, and like originally I was going to go back to the Special Warfare Training Group, um, but like I didn't know, I didn't feel good about it. Like I had gotten this combat infantry badge, which is like if you're an infantryman, this is like what you want
Hmm.
because it tells the world that you saw combat. But the problem is I had not seen combat, like truly. I had had a rocket fly over my head,
Sure.
and somebody put me in for it. And I didn't want to be put in for it because I didn't think I'd earned it. But everybody told me to shut the fuck up because if I didn't get it, then like all these other people who did want it wouldn't get it.
Right.
Or
Right.
that's how it was explained to me. So I got this like CIB, and yeah, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to show up to special forces with a CIB that I didn't earn. Like I felt like that was just like it was just not a good thing to do. So I was kind of half-assed, like in and out. I was really enjoying. Like I'd went back to the line. I'd went to Bravo Company, which is where I stood or stayed, I guess I should say, throughout the rest of my career. And like I really liked this company. Had good like leaders. It was just a great unit,
Hmm.
and I decided I was going to stay. And the the dude that I worked with in S2 came to me and he was like, "We are going on another surprise deployment, like very short notice, but we're not going to work for Big Army." Like, we're not going to work for the regular Army.
Mm.
We're going to go work for the Joint Special Operations Command. And I thought he was lying. Like, I was certain he was lying. I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I don't know who told you this, but like, that's so unbelievable. Like, that doesn't happen. It's untrue.
Right.
And he told me that, and I think it was about like 5 days later. Company commanders like all had to have a meeting with all the Joes. Like, they pulled in all their companies, and they were like, guys, like, we're gonna go on a deployment into Iraq. We're gonna work for what they call like an OGA, which is not true. It's totally not true. But like, they basically made it sound like we were gonna go work for the CIA, which we fucking weren't. Like, we were working for JSOC, but not like, it wasn't like so super secret and as cool as they wanted it. But that's what they told us. And I was like, and it was for real. I was like, holy shit, and I had a packet to put in to go back at that point. Like, I decided I was going to go back to be a Green Beret, and I went and like pulled the packet. It's like, I'm staying. I want this deployment. Like, this sounds cool as hell. And we had some special guys from down the street here at Bragg like come and train us up. Like, we got like a really, really legit like 2-month train up where we just stayed in the field, like did a lot of CQB and a lot of mount, like a lot of just room clearing and shit. And we were learning it from dudes who were named like Mike and Steve. They didn't have like a rank. They look like all these like characters and shit. Like, all these dudes try to be really cool dudes. Asymmetric warfare kind of got there's like a group back then where guys would come out of SF or Ranger VAT or Delta or some other units. And they'd go to what they call like asymmetric warfare group. And these guys were kind of like advisors. And so like they would embed with different units and kind of swap spit between the different units, like kind of advise and be like, hey, you're having this problem. Like, I saw this work over at this peak. So like, we were learning some cool shit from them. Got a couple of those guys embedded with us. And so, yeah, like we landed, God, where did we land? I guess we landed in Biop. And they were like, okay, take off your unit badge, like take off your 82nd badge. And they gave us these little black squares that were like double-sided Velcro. Like, one side had like, it was just black. It was like a black Velcro background, and then the other side it had a battle roster number, and it had I'm not gonna say what it was, but it had a battle roster. Like, you had a battle roster, and that was in like glint tape, like IR glint tape. And so, yeah, they're like, this is your unit patch. Like, if anybody asks what unit you're in, you tell them you're with the Joint Task Force. If they ask for a task force number, you tell them that they need to talk to your commander. And they flew us to Spiker, and we lived like on our own compound, like totally locked down, locked away from everybody else. We had just our battalion there. And
so at this point, you're thinking everything they told us is true. Like, I'm a
little shocked. Like, yeah, secret. I was like, and they relaxed all kinds of standards, because when you're in the 82nd, I mean, you're really drinking the fucking Army Kool-Aid. Like, your hair's, I mean, a lot of dudes would try to grow their hair out, but it was still like totally within the specs and, polished boots and all kinds of shit. But like, they were like, wear whatever boots you want, like shave if you want. I mean, we had to like shave when we were like back on the fob, but like when we were out in the field, like, I didn't care. It was very cool. Like, you could wear all kinds of unauthorized equipment and gear, and if you wanted something, you'd get it. And the trip about this is they would put you in like I think they call it like ISO prep, where you get like 3 days where you get like 3 days off. So you could go to the PX, you fucking go, because it's Spiker. So Spiker's got like badass PXs and MWRs and gyms. And I mean, it was Spiker was huge back then. It was like one of the biggest fobs, I think. And so you could do anything you wanted there for like 3 days. And we had like buses, that would take us out of our compound to all these other places that would like run these little routes. You'd ride the bus to go to the MWR, you'd ride the bus to go to the gym, you'd ride the bus, like whatever.
Right.
So yeah, we did that, and then so you had like 3 or 4 days of that, and then you had like 3 or 4 days of like what they call like this ISO prep, where it's like you go to the fucking um, you go to the chow hall, and that was like it. And then the rest of the time, you were just like planning your mission or trying to get yourself into a reverse cycle to where you would sleep in the day and stay up all night.
Right.
Um, so like they try to get you that way. And so yeah, you plan out your mission for 3 days, and then we had like our little fob within a fob was like big enough that it had like I think like 2 or 3 like PZs, and so on that last night, like you walk out there and you had to have all your shit. Helicopters would land, you'd load up in helicopters, and then they'd fly us out for like 3 days. Like we'd get dropped off somewhere. Like at that point, we were working mostly in I think they call it like the Triangle of Death. It was like Yusufia is like the main area that we were in back then, and we'd just camp out there for 3 days and just start shit. Which in that area was not hard to do. I mean, they hated us.
Sure.
These were all of like Saddam's like most loyal. They were trying like this is where the insurgency was real hot, and where we were going was like there were all these other units who were outposted there, but they were just getting like their shit pushed in. Like they were getting ID'd like so hardcore that a lot of them like couldn't leave their fobs. Like they drive out of their fobs like half a mile and just get blown to shit.
Wow.
Take casualties. They drag them back in, and like yeah, they were getting whooped. And so like they called like Big Army JSOC and were like, hey, what can you guys do for us? And they're like, yeah, we'll send these dipshit paratroopers in. Like, so we would just go in, like I said, and they'd give us the first night we'd go in, they'd give us, I mean, probably what in reality are like super low level, like missions to like try to kill capture guys, which were, I would say, probably not that successful. I mean, I know that we got some, but
Sure.
a Chinook is a rather noisy aircraft. We had a lot of trouble with like the LZs were routinely missed most of the time. Then it's like summertime. They're irrigating the shit out of those fields at that time of year.
Sure.
So like this is over by the Euphrates, and these irrigation canals there are, I mean, they're as old as civilization. Like some of them literally,
Sure.
and all these fields are flooded. So I mean, they drop us off at night if they got us in the right field, which they routinely didn't. It's just shitty mud, like calf deep mud. So we tended to bog down, and we're the 82nd. I mean, we're pretty badass, but we're not like fucking Delta Force like hitting compounds and shit. Like it was pretty
Right.
sloppy. So, but I think they knew that. I mean, they had to have known that. And I think from what I heard from my friends that were like stayed in S2, our primary purpose was just to stir battle space. Was just to kick an ant pill, you know what I mean, and just cause the ants to run around, and then all the big boys would go in and do shit. And plus, one thing that I will say is they gave us like a constant umbrella of close air support. Anything from like AC-130s to F-18s. I mean, we had all kinds of shit. We had drones. We had all kinds of shit. And routinely would just drop hell on people. So yeah, I mean, it was a fun in like a weird way. It was a tour that if you wanted to be in the infantry and in the army, it was a fucking cool tour. Like,
right.
I mean, we took casualties with awesome dudes. I don't mean to say it was like fun, because there was a lot of times like I was miserable, but as far as like doing your job, if you wanted to do that kind of work, that was like kind of it.
Right.
And then,
And it's like special forcey enough to feel kind of extra cool.
yeah, and I'll tell you, like it was at this point, like in this tour, that I more or less decided that I wasn't probably ever going to go and try to be a Green Beret, because like it dawned on me that like Green Berets work in teams of like 12. Occasionally they'll have like a few more attachments or other teams to augment, but for the most part, like they're teams of 12. And unless you're in like a pipe hitting like DA team or a SIF team or a CRIF team, whatever, you're like kind of hanging out with a bunch of local nationals, and they're your main force. So you don't have that many people. I was really thrilled about the idea that, like, I mean, we were doing like company level operations. Like, we were setting in company level ambushes and raids, and that's a lot of people. That's a lot of
Right.
ass, like, is what we'd say. Like, it was really nice. Like, we had this one fighting, like, our blocking position that we were on one time where we had like two, what we call like bongo trucks, which are like work trucks or whatever, just loaded up with like some really angry fucking Sunnis. And dude, we laid in a company level ambush. Like, we were shooting like 4 240s. I think we fired like 3 AT4s. We had company 60 millimeter mortars doing direct lay. Um,
Right.
we had like, I don't even know how many saws and M4s and M203s. I mean, we smoked these guys. I mean, you're not doing that shit with an SF team. Like, with an SF team, like, two bongo trucks rolling up to you is a problem.
Right.
For a company, yeah, for an infantry company, it's like, bro, like, you fucking picked on the wrong kid. Like, so like, it was really nice. Like, it was like I said, like, we did pretty well. Like, as a unit, like, we did really well. We got like I think a valorous unit citation. But again, took casualties. I mean, we had a kid win a silver star. I want to say like 350 meters from me. Had some numerous other like really terrible and grievous casualties, like guys that are messed up for life.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mean to say that it was all fun, but it was an interesting deployment. And then, you know, we were back, like I said before, like, we were back from that like 6 days, and Big Army is like, hey, where the fuck you been? I'm like, oh yeah, we were doing our cool guy deployment. And I'm like, oh, fuck yourselves. You know, we do 18-month deployments now, and you owe us like another fucking 11 months.
Wow.
And so they put us in on the surge, and then we were in Baghdad, just being a regular army unit in Baghdad for 11 months after that, in the middle of like the major sectarian violence, in like the heart of the city. Like, it wasn't a bad part of the city, I should say, because there were way worse, but it was different. So yeah, all three of those deployments are incredibly different. Like, you know, the first Iraq and Afghanistan deployments were like very rural, like very. Afghanistan was like being in fucking Mars.
Sure.
I mean, there were no people. You know, they were huddled in like little bitty compound villages that were just, you know, very bizarre, very weird.
Right.
The first Iraq, everybody hated us. There were more people. You know, there was a lot more like cultivation and farming and stuff, but like, it was also a very bizarre place. And then Baghdad was, I mean, it's a pretty modern city, so to speak. You know, like, there's worse parts of Baltimore than Baghdad. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Huh. What's one thing I try to ask everybody, what is if a kid was to come to you and say, hey, I'm planning on joining the military, what's your advice? What would you say to them?
Gosh, this is gonna make me sound like shit. I honestly don't know. If it was 2004, I'd be like, join, sign up. Like, even, you know, a lot of people hate the Iraq War, especially. I don't. A lot of people hate the Afghanistan War, think it was a big waste of time. I don't. I do think that, like, we could have picked easier objectives, and we could have left earlier if we were just going to leave.
Sure.
But the experience of it, I think, was very valuable to me. But it comes at a big cost for me, but especially for others. So if it was back then, you know, and they really want to get into the war, yeah, like, they should join. Now, I don't know. I've had kids come and say, like, I want to join the military. What do I need to do? And I was like, you need to go to a trade school. Like, go and learn how to plumb. You know what I mean? Like, go be an electrician. Go learn a skill. Something. Yeah. But assuming that I didn't say that, I didn't tell them no, because I hate to be that guy, because the truth is, like, you know, I didn't join in some Pax Americana, peaceful, beautiful stage where we had the best, you know, global interests and, whatever. So let's say I told somebody to join. I would tell them to pick. Well, I'd really ask them. The first question I'd ask is whether or not they want to be a soldier. Soldier, like, do they just want a uniform? Do they just want college? Do they just want a
Right.
skill? Do they just want to leave home? If the answer to any of those is yes, go to the Air Force if you can, right? Because it's not as it's almost the military. Like it's like being in the military, but it's like not stupid. I feel like the Air Force is where they've got a better idea of how to do shit. Like
Sure.
And learn a skill, like learn a valuable skill, like learn something, become like go do networking, like learn how to computers, learn something like or maintenance, learn how to work on
Mm-hmm.
aircraft, learn how to work on diesel engines, electricians, whatever. Go get a skill. I
Yeah.
think that is a really great thing. If you're just trying to get out, if you just want money for college, if you just want to do something with your life that achieves a higher purpose, those are the things you should do.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn about like leadership and how to deal with a little bit more adversity, if you want to feel like a soldier, join the infantry. Like I still think that regardless of, I didn't stay in that long. But I learned a lot. I did 5.5 years
Mm-hmm.
total, and I don't regret a minute of it. It was a totally good move. And I know more about people and myself. I'm in a leadership position like now in my career, and the gentleman I work with, I mean, he actually was a lieutenant colonel in the infantry, which I always tease him all the time because I actually hired him. But
Right.
I'm always
Right.
like, yeah, bro. Like, I used to tell him when he worked for me, like, you work for a fucking staff sergeant. Like, look at yourself. Like, um, but like, he and I both like, kind of have a knowledge about people and leadership that like it seems like is rare in
Mm.
our profession, and I feel like is in a lot of professions. I want to say at some point in the 80s, 100% of the folks running all the world banks were Vietnam veterans or something. I read the statistic a while back, or
Oh.
maybe I heard. I
Huh.
think take it back. I think I actually heard it on this Mike Rowe show. I need to look it up, but yeah, I really think that like it's a really good infantry is a good leadership school. So if but it comes with a big risk. Like
Sure.
most of the casualties in the war were Marine and Army infantry. And
Yeah.
a lot of special operators and stuff, and those are the ones you mostly hear about. But truth be told, like I want to say it was something like 40% of the killed in action were
Huh.
infantry, which, given how small that part of the Army and the Marines actually is,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite a lot. So yeah, I mean, I would tell them to join. I still don't think it's a bad move. I don't want to see them go fight in some European war, the kind of shit that's going on now, or I also see like I do think that the Army's changed. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it's as bad as many of my peers. I think a lot of them like make a big deal out of, like this woke shit. I know people that are on the line now, and there's a little bit of things that like they can't do
Mm-hmm.
that I could do, but some of it's good. I mean, in that podcast that there will be bourbon with Eric, like I told him, like I got thrown out of a second story window in a sleeping bag. Like that shit should not have happened. Like if that stopped happening, it's probably good.
Right. There's
Like
other ways to
yeah,
make you hard and to make you part of the
yeah,
team.
yeah. I mean, there was like absolute hazing. I mean, I participated in it. I also perpetuated it. Like, yeah, some of that shit needed to go actually. So I don't know.
Sure.
If a kid wants to join, I think it's not. There's worse things they could do with their life right now than join the military.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah. Huh. What's one thing you know now? You may have already touched on this. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew before you joined?
Oh, uh, not to be an alcoholic. I think that'd be a good one.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that one's easy. That one's very personal, but like for other people, it's that volunteering is actually a good thing. When you first join the military, especially when you're a private, you're like, you don't ever volunteer for anything, right? Like you volunteer, you wind up. I mean, I remember the first lesson in this was we were in what they call like the 30th AG or Adjutant General. Like it's like a holding prison for people that are about to go to basic training. Like you're like fresh off the bus. Like you've just been issued your camouflage. Like you're in the Army, but you're not like in yet. You haven't gone to basic.
Right.
And this dude was like, this drill sergeant was like, who has driver's licenses? And you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to be able to drive a truck. Like I'm going to be able to drive like, I'm not going to have to walk. Everybody else is going to have to walk. I'm going to drive. And so like, like we raise our hands and he comes over. He's like, you guys have driver's license? And I'm like, yeah, Roger Darn. And I'm like, good. If you can drive a car, you can drive this floor buffer. This floor buffer is way less complicated than a car. So like you guys should be pros. And it teaches you this lesson where it's like, don't volunteer. Like you volunteer, you're gonna wind up doing something you don't.
Right.
But like near the end of my career in the military, and even now, even those things, like after a while, like you continue to volunteer, like it gets noticed. Like people see it and they reward it,
Sure.
especially if you volunteer for something and it is difficult and you don't complain about it and you do it. Like one of the things I volunteered for was the color guard. Like we had to have a color guard, which is like this whole thing with flags and shit, and it's so lame. And if you're in the infantry, it's like it's not what you want to do. And I think I was a staff sergeant when I volunteered for this, but I volunteered for it, and rather than complain, like I did what I was supposed to. I had these guys out on on the weekend. I get to pick whoever I wanted, and I picked all these squared away soldiers, and like trained them on the weekend, and like I hated it. They hated it, but I tried not to make it as lame as it was, and we ended up like doing really well. Like I think we had some competition. I don't think we won it. I want to say like we came in like second or something, but it was like good enough to get noticed. And then, there were other things that came down the pipe like later on. Like one of them is like teaching. We had a bunch of students from the Army War College come to the 82nd to be like taught about what we do. And so like I actually got to lead this whole like detail where we set up a division headquarters wearing like all of our gear with all of our weapons, and taught these folks that were attending war college, which I found to be like really rewarding because, I mean, these are ultimately the kind of the decision makers and policy makers that end up getting folks into war.
Sure.
And so like actually being able to kind of talk to them about what it's really like, I hope like made an impact. And then, yeah, I mean, it came with, stupid awards and shit, but yeah, I'd say volunteering, like if you're a young soldier and you're listening to this, or even if you're not, like that's an opportunity is what it is. And the kind of people who say like no to opportunity don't ever get anywhere.
Right. And it opens up new experiences, the possibility for new experiences too.
Right.
What was it like transitioning out of the military into back into civilian life? Okay.
It was awful. I mean, I would even say I still haven't. I mean, I got out in like 2009 or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2012. I'm still talking about it. I still run a Twitter account where I'm called the Grandpa.
Right.
Like, one could argue, I think, easily that I haven't done a really good job of transitioning. Like I haven't done a great job. Like I'm very much like very vet bro-y. Like I think I reinforce so many stereotypes about veterans. Like I dress like one
Right.
knowingly.
Right.
And it's also just so that like if other folks are veterans, that like we can have that secret commerce, or we can come up to each other and talk about it. Like
Sure.
um I very much I hire a ton of veterans like at my company. At one point when I was running one particular team, I had over 50% of the folks that worked for me were veterans. And
Right.
it was like a 9-man team. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've done a great job transitioning, honestly. It was tough. Like I got out. I haven't talked about it a lot. I went to the National Guard. I had a bad experience in the National Guard. I didn't get along with the National Guard. Um, I didn't get in any major trouble, but I didn't leave on the best terms. I got out.
Right.
Didn't enjoy that. And I was also going to college. And this was around the time that everybody, was like the Iraq war needs to end. And like we're a bunch of baby killers and had a lot
Sure.
of problems. Like there was a couple of times in college that um, I didn't get in any fights or anything, but like I said things in class that probably weren't helpful to the discussion. And yeah, it was just I don't know, it was tough. And then, I wasn't back very long, and suffered some personal things, like personal tragedies, like lost a parent, and then lost one of my friends from the war, actually my best friend. He had went to another unit when I got out. Like right before I got out, he went to the 101st. And he was having a rough time. Like they immediately threw him on a deployment to Afghanistan, and I was in contact with him the whole time he was deployed. He was gone for like 11 months or something. He was supposed to be back on the 12th month, and he was going to get married. And I was kind of living vicariously through him, like
Right. Right.
and yeah, he got killed, and I had a really tough time with it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about transitioning. I don't think I did a great job. I think I'm finally transitioned. It took me like 10 years, and I still retain a lot of the whatever. I mean, it definitely had an impact on me. Like my military service means a lot to me. But
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, it's not like when you get out, you have to just forsake every aspect of it. I mean, like you say, you found a lot of value in it, and to hold on to a lot of that.
but see,
There can be
it's
benefit in it.
funny though. Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you first get out, and I think every soldier does this. They're all like, "Fuck the army. I'm
Right.
never
I'm
going
gonna
to
grow
be
my
that
hair.
dude that's yeah, I'm going to grow my hair. I'm going to grow a beard. I'm not going to, I'm not going to talk about it. Like, I'm going to just totally move on with my life." And I did that like for a couple of years. I was like, fuck the army, fuck the war, fuck all this. Like, I'm too cool. I'm too cool for it. And then you miss it a little bit. And then, somebody like thanks you for your service, and it just hits right. And then you start to embrace it. And then you go like a little too far.
Right.
I think the pendulum has kind of quit swinging for me, where I'm like, I acknowledge it. If I can see that somebody's a veteran or they want to talk to me about it, like enthusiastically talk about it, because again, like I really value my time. But yeah, the transition is hard. I've seen a lot of people transition very poorly. Like I feel like, if you get out and you don't have a new plan or a new mission or something you want to do, I feel like you fail 9 times out of 10.
Sure.
And I've seen a lot of folks like just manage to not really leave the nest.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they leave without a plan or something, then often they just go back in a couple years later, or
happens
shortly
too.
after. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that a lot. And I know people that, I've got like 2 buddies that are like still tried to get back in, like recently tried to go back in, like in their like mid-30s. Like,
Right.
most of us go through like a midlife crisis, and like we do something different. Like we could buy a sports car or divorce our wives or some shit. And some of these dudes instead are like, oh, I'm going to go back and be in the infantry.
Right.
Fuck you are. Like,
That is a
it's a
young
bad
man's
move.
game.
It is not. Yeah, for sure. I mean, God, I couldn't imagine. I told you when we started this, like, I twisted my ankle in my fucking office here, like walking in,
Right.
like how the hell am I going to go back on patrol? You don't want me out there. That's a bad idea.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding. um, you mentioned something. I made a note and I didn't make it fully, but you mentioned something about um the kind of the quality of recruits or something. I just wrote down perfection versus volume in terms of like I
Mm.
think you were talking about um the quality of recruits that they're getting or something. And I quite honestly don't remember now where I was going to go with that thought. But kind of what are your thoughts on that, like in terms of I guess quantity versus quality kind of situation for
I
recruiting?
think, I mean, unfortunately, I can play both sides of this, and I don't know where I land. Because
Sure.
when I was in, like back when I was in, I was like, we need to get rid of all these shit bags. I would rather, and it's kind of true. I would rather go into a battle with like 10 dudes who are really good than like 30 dudes who are like okay, you know.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
and standards even then were abysmally low,
Mhm.
and they're worse now from what I hear.
Yeah.
I think certain units have it better than others. I mean, again, like I was in a great company. I mean, I had great command, like I had great officers. I had great NCOs. I really got lucky. I got super lucky when joining the military. Like I ended up, like I washed ashore to a good beach, and not everybody had it so good. But
Sure.
I do think that like the standards have to increase, but at the same time, you know, nobody's joining. Like nobody joins anymore. Like this is kind of where I landed
Right.
with like the women in the infantry thing. Like I was on the other side of this debate forever. Where I was like, they do not need to come. They're going to lower standards. They're going to what? And it's true. They totally have. Totally
Sure.
have lowered standards from everything I've heard and seen. They've lowered the standards to be in the infantry and to be in these others. And but the truth is, they gotta have numbers. Like you know, you can't be Napoleon if you have a fire team. Like you need an
Right.
army. You have to have these units, and they have to be like billeted by somebody. And if you raise the standard to a certain degree, you don't have enough of a force at all. And it may be a really awesome
Mm.
one, but it's still war's still a numbers game to some degree. So I don't know. I mean, in this one, I'd say like there's a Goldilocks zone somewhere, and I think the Army is actually pretty good at finding it, despite what I think. I mean,
Mhm.
I think everybody should exceed the Army's standard. Like the minimum is not what you should be aiming for, especially if you're in the infantry or on any kind of like combat arms unit. You should
Mhm.
be attempting to achieve perfection all the time. Personally, professionally, you should encourage it in your unit from your fire team all the way to your battalion. Like you should
Right.
really strive hard for like just being the best. But for the military as a whole, like they've got to get enough people in the door. Recruitment's hard enough. Nobody wants to sign up for it. And then I think it's something
Mhm.
like 40%, 50% of the kids that are eligible to join the military are too obese to join right now.
Oh
It's
wow.
some incredible statistic.
Wow.
It's probably out of date. I bet it's even worse than I've said, but a remarkable number of people who are of eligible age for recruitment or are on the selective service
Mhm.
are could not join today in their present state. They're too fat, which is not good.
Wow.
So if you're the Army, I mean, what do you do? I mean, that's the thing, right? Like
Right.
they have to they have to fill those positions. They have to, the military industrial complex needs somebody to shoot all these guns, like and all these
Right.
bullets, like the war must go on. So I don't know. Hopefully
Huh.
they can keep that well tuned. I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's
Right.
all I'm happy for. It's not my problem.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. What what are your thoughts on, cuz part how should I phrase this? Your first deployment or first tour in Afghanistan was kind of more of a like a policing to a certain extent. And then your second
Hmm.
tour was obviously much more soldiering, and then your third one maybe kind of a mix. Unless I'm mistaken. What are your thoughts on the differences there? Or maybe just your experiences with them?
Yeah, so Afghanistan was, I don't know what we were doing. I don't know what impact we had.
Mm,
Again, I think the best thing we did was like absolutely punish anybody that did dare attack us, which was again so rare. But when it did happen, I mean, they got smoked.
sure.
That had to have had an impact. I think we bribed all the right local nationals, like all the right police chiefs and tribal leaders, and um, it was a pretty peaceful place. I mean, we were in Logar and Wardak and Ghazni and all of like this like southern part of RC East. I think is what it would be. I'm sure somebody will get on Twitter and tell me I don't know what I'm fucking talking about in stolen valor, but I wasn't a fucking general then. I was like a specialist
Right,
PFC.
right.
So like to my recollection, that area was like pretty well past 5 miles there. I mean, it's
Right.
pretty.
They've got
It's
Google at their fingertips. You're operating off
yeah,
of memory,
man.
so
And I'm
chill.
not even yeah. And again, I'm not that smart. So I think I know where I was, but I don't know what we were doing. We drove around a lot. We talked a lot. We handed out soccer balls and radios and
Mm,
fucking matchbooks with Osama bin Laden on them. You know what I mean? Like we did a lot of shit. I don't know what the outcome was. It wasn't bad, wasn't good. I wouldn't even say it was policing because we didn't police anything. Like
okay,
I mean, yeah,
fair enough.
we were just there. Like we were just there. Like I think the idea was just like kind of a show of force because it was the first elections that Afghanistan
Right.
had. Like we were there to like secure them, and I mean it went off without a hitch. I guess. Like I mean, it wasn't exactly democracy, but it was an
Sure.
election, so we
Right.
could always say like, oh, we democratized Afghanistan, even though we really didn't. But so that was fine. That first Iraq deployment, the one in the middle, that one was absolutely punitive. Like we did not police
Sure.
anybody. Um, like again, like we were kind of a hit squad, I guess. Like the first night was always like they dropped us off in the bad places with the bad people, told us where they thought they were, and I mean went in there and got them. Like either shot them or arrested them, and that one was a I don't know. That one I felt like there was a metaphor that my battalion commander used all the time. He kept saying like we're moving the football forward, which it
Mm,
felt that way. Like in hindsight and through my reading, I don't think we did. Like
right.
I think we killed some people that like back then. I mean, I always laugh at this and be like, "Yeah, we killed some terrorists." And I'm like, "Terrorists? Like, I don't know about that." Like,
Bad dudes,
we they were I don't know bad. I mean, bad.
potentially.
It's so funny too. Yeah, I mean, and it's always funny too because like it's like we use these like childish labels like, "Oh, we killed bad guys," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." Like, were they bad guys though? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading, you know, I'm like
Sure.
reading too much postmodern shit where I'm like, who's really bad? Like I could be bad in this scenario. I can absolutely see where we made more terrorists than we ever dispatched. Like in that tour
Mm,
especially,
sure.
because we were we were given a very loose ROE and mandate. It was literally like everybody here just about's bad. I mean,
Right.
obviously we weren't like running around like smoking women and kids and shit, but to say that like we always did the right thing and the thing by the book, and I don't think that's true. Like I think you could make an argument that we terrorized those folks just as much as they terrorized each other at that part and in
Mm,
that part of the war. Like it
sure.
was a very different part of the country, and so yeah, that was a very punitive like campaign. Like that was very rough on them and us. And then the one in Baghdad that set that last deployment, that one was very weird because it was a mix of both of those. Where um, during
Mm,
the day we we did patrols, and we had to do a 3. If you went on a patrol, like every day, one platoon was on like patrol duty, is what they'd call it, and you had to put 3 hours out in the city on each patrol, and usually you had to do 2 a day. So, talking about like 6 hours in the city, and what are you fucking doing for 6 hours? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? They'd say, "Oh, this isn't a presence patrol," because they couldn't use that word because that had been like leaked back to the states, and like the civilian press had gotten like, "Oh, our boys are getting killed just driving around with no purpose," so you couldn't call it a presence patrol anymore. But what it would be is like they'd say like, "Oh, we're gonna go do like some sensing operations," like we're gonna go and talk to the locals and see how they're doing. And you have like this little card where you're like, how many hours of the day do you have power? And, if you have a problem, like who do you go to? And, it was like the stupid, like we're like the Census Bureau. Like, like just, and really like, we're not dummies, we know this is kind of fucking stupid. And so it got to be like, you'd be on patrol and you'd be like, there's a satellite dish in that house. We're going to that house, or there's a swamp cooler out front. Like that one's got like the best that Iraq air conditioning can get. It's over here. And so we would just like, we would hit those houses. And I say hit, like, I mean, you still had to like clear them, but I mean, there's no threat there. It's like, you just like walk through, clear it, make sure nobody's going to jump out of a closet and handgun you or something. And yeah, you just sit in there and, the lieutenant would have to like ask all these stupid questions about power and sewage and trash and who they're voting for and how they feel about America. And like he had to do all this dumb shit with the Turk. But the rest of us would just be like drinking chai, like that, like the woman of the house would like bring us, or like watching fucking soccer on, or like Bollywood, like, we'd watch that, or we'd all crowd around like the evaporation cooler, like trying not to sweat our ass off. Like, and so, yeah, you'd do this for like 6 hours a day when you're on patrol status. And then when you were off patrol status, you were either on guard or doing like, you were kind of like put down. Like it was kind of like a resting period where you weren't really allowed to rest. Like you still had to pull guard duties and all this other shit. And like you were saying, like KP, like pots and pans and peeling potatoes or whatever. Like the privates had to do that. Like the NCOs had it a little easier, but you had that platoon. And then there was one more platoon where we did more of that punitive shit. So like that one, we because of what we had done in the previous deployment, we were allowed to work with like some intelligence units and do like targeted precision raids in the city. And so for that one, that was where I felt like we were doing the most good at the time. Because again, punitive, like, they'd come and they'd say, you're going to go get this guy. Here's his sheet. And, sometimes I had a picture of him. Most of the time it didn't. But it would say, like, this guy is a fucking Goodfellas. Like, he's a gangster, basically. He just sells gasoline, like black market. He's got some ties to the Jay Shaw Mahdi. Like, he's bad, but he's not the worst. But we want you to go get him. And so we'd go get him. And then sometimes it'd be like, this son of a bitch, like, bombed the Green Zone Hospital. This guy's fucking, directly attributed to like, a murder cell or a torture cell or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that felt good. But again, like, I mean, I don't know how much good it did.
Yeah, I there's value in that. Like you were talking about your about your middle deployment. It's easy to sit back and kind of armchair general the thing, but like you're saying, when you're in the midst of it, you're not looking at the big picture. You're not necessarily looking at, hey, are we saving the world? You're looking at, I'm helping my friends. I'm making sure that we all get through the day. And I think there's a lot of value in hearing that viewpoint, being reminded that you were just dealing with day to day. It's not, it's easy to criticize later, but the reality is that it's not always that easy.
If that makes sense. It does. Yeah. And that's kind of how it was couched. Like, even then, I mean, we weren't idiots. I mean, we kind of knew that the war was a little pointless. Like, especially on that last deployment, like it became very obvious to me that like we had no intention of like winning the war in the way that I thought
Sure.
wars were supposed to be won.
Yeah.
Now that second one, again, like it felt a little bit closer to that. But really, what that the motivation in that was is you had these poor we called them legs because they weren't airborne. But like, you had these fucking poor bastards that were like stuck out here in these like little cops. And like I said before, I mean, they drive out on like they couldn't leave the wire on a patrol with like fewer than like 6 to 8 vehicles. And some of them were rolling out in like Bradleys and shit, and then just getting fucking decimated. They'd go out and they'd just get bombed to hell, and they'd take like 10 casualties, like 2 dudes would be dead. Everybody else would just be fucked up. And they'd have to like, the rest of the mission is just a Kazovac trying to get everybody like back to the rear safe. And, they just have to do that over and over and over. And,
Sure.
And then they'd sit in these cops and they'd get, mortared and rocketed. And yeah, I mean, we were like, fuck it. Like, we'll go in and kill those dudes for you. You know what I mean? Like we've got all these assets, like JSOC's, giving us the Navy with all the fucking JDAMs like we could eat, like
right.
fucking AC-130s and shit at night. Like they're like, fuck it, yeah, we'll just go in and just like fucking start shit with these guys. And our unit smoked a lot of people. Like, I mean, and they were bad.
Sure.
Like they were legitimately bad. And so yeah, you felt like you're like, yeah, fuck them. Like we're doing something good. But in hindsight, like I absolutely think that if America invaded my neighborhood, I'd be fucking blowing the shit out of them too. Like, fuck you. Like,
right.
What are you doing here? This is my country. Like, it's only when you get older you kind of realize like it's not a waste. It wasn't a waste. I don't like that word, but
sure. Yeah,
it
seems
wasn't
denigrating to everyone.
Yeah, and again, like I don't mean to say that like Iraq meant a lot to me, because I think that like I do think Iraq's better off today than they were under Saddam. I think that like that that phase that they had to go through, like a chrysalis, like where they had to go from Saddam to now to like a little bit of a majority ruled democracy, democratic republic thing, whatever it is that we'd call them now, even though they're a proxy of Iran, which kind of sucks. But I think they're better off. They are the people. That in between phase was rough.
Sure.
They had a lot of bad blood that they had to get out. Like they had to fight it out. And it sucks because we got in the middle of it. But strategically, it was a shit show. Like we didn't get anything to show for it. I don't regret it. I don't regret the time there. But yeah, it was not a waste, but it was wasteful.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I see the distinction. Yeah. So what your non-deployment time in the military, what was kind of the contrast there compared to being deployed?
I hated it. I hated it.
Okay.
Like, I really hated being in the Army when I wasn't deployed.
Right.
I did have a good leader when I was young in the military, because like there's a thing that a lot of infantrymen like throw out. They're like, I'm not a garrison soldier, is what they'd say. I'm a field soldier, And like I had this really good leader when I was younger, and he was like, fuck you. You're just a shitty soldier. Because there's no such thing as a garrison soldier, and there's no such thing as a field soldier. Like, you're a fucking soldier or you're not. Like, you got to be able to shoot, but you got to be able to salute. You got to do all this stupid shit too. And so I never tried to make that distinction. I tried to always say that like I was a soldier, whether I was in garrison or whether I was in the field, but I fucking hated garrison time. I didn't like all the paperwork really, but I'd do it, because it's my job. It was just like it was just different. Like but again, I was in the 82nd, so I was in a good unit. Like I know everybody hates to hear it. I don't care, but a lot of our stuff, like when we were in garrison, we were in the field a lot. We were in the field at least more than a third of the time. So out
Mm.
of like 30 days, we would have at least 10 days in the field. And then the time that we weren't in the field, we were at a range or we were doing something. Like I did not have a lot of idle time in the Army. Like really, I hear people talk
Mm.
about this, like because we were light infantry or airborne infantry, we didn't have vehicles. Like I wasn't in the fucking motor pool. I can't tell you shit about how to maintain a Humvee or I don't fucking know anything about it. Like when I was in Iraq, I kind of had to learn some of it, but I mean, really, we just rode the shit out of those things, and if they broke, we just drove off to somebody else and fucking had them fix it. Like I don't
Right.
know, like
Right.
I don't know about that shit. Like I don't know how to take care of any of that. Yeah, I mean, jumped out of airplanes when we could, because there was a war. Most of those planes were going back and forth, like flying cheese to fucking Burger King or whatever, like in Baghdad. Like they weren't doing a lot of jumps, but
Mm-hmm.
doing jumps when we could, and then just spending a lot of time in the field. I mean, of course, we were still doing shit in the field that didn't make sense, but it wasn't bad. It just wasn't really what I liked. It was very, I don't know. My deployments were like very thankfully away from what they'd call like the flagpole. Like we were away from like the higher ups.
Right.
I didn't have, very rarely saw a battalion commander, and if I
Mm-hmm.
did, it was just like, he was just like, hey, how you doing? Shaking a few hands, kissing a few babies, and then he was fucking off. Like he did not want to be where we were because it sucked. Um, and so that was nice. But then like, when you were in garrison, it was just these like, it was just rules and, dudes are getting in trouble for drinking and
Mm-hmm.
fucking DUIs or fighting and I don't know, it was barracks inspections and payday activities and it was just shit that sucked. I mean, just to me, it was just like not really being a soldier. It was just wearing a uniform and having a fucking job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The you get more job satisfaction when you're doing your job. So
Yeah,
so being deployed, especially as an infantryman, you're like that. This is I'm now doing my job,
this
and the
is what
rest
I'm
of the time
supposed to do. Right.
I'm just getting paid to practice my job, kind of.
Yeah, and kind of is a
So
thing because yeah, you do like Operation Clean Sweep. That's what they call it here at Bragg, where you're fucking for like a week and a half. All you do is just like fucking rake lines in the dirt and make piles of pine straw and pick up trash and sweep parking lots and just shit. You're like, what the fuck is the point? Like, why did I join the army for this shit? Like, just so that some like dude can drive by,
right.
on his way to a change of command or, All American Week and be like, oh, wow, this post is really well organized. Good job, guys.
Right.
It's like stupid.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder what job or what MOS does enjoy garrison duty. Probably nobody, I would
MPs,
think.
fucking
Yeah,
MPs
well,
throwing fucking, all right. Because if you're in garrison and they're in garrison, like, it's an MP, like, yeah, it's like fish in the barrel. Like, it's time to
right.
go fucking ride some tickets. Like, get some dependents like busted for fucking driving too fast in a residential area and like some Joe fucking got drunk and was pissing outside his barracks and bust him down. I don't know. I'm sure I'd probably make fun of the MPs. Some MPs probably mad right now, but
Right.
I would
Right.
I would think if you're a cop, like garrison is what you're supposed to do. You're
Yeah, that's
supposed to
true.
be a fucking cop. If everybody else is deployed and you're in garrison, like as a cop, like you're probably bored as shit.
I think the ridicule comes with the job, though. It's part of the part of the description.
Yeah, I mean, every MO, like, there's inter MOS rivalry, there's inter branch rivalry, like the
Yeah.
Marines and the Army are like constantly fighting, but both of them like will team up to make fun of like the Navy and Air Force.
Right.
Like there's totally like this weird hierarchy. And then, everybody that's an infantryman calls everybody else a pogue. If you weren't infantry, you're a pogue. And then there's all these other branches that are almost like combat related. Like the funniest one to me is like the like Cav Scouts and infantry. Because like
Okay.
Cav Scouts are like, I mean, God, I make fun of them a lot. But like Cav Scouts they're in the armor branch,
Okay,
but they're
sure.
not like in a fucking tank, right? Like they have like infantry stuff, and their job is to like kind of be the infantry for tanks, which is dumb, right? Like you should just have fucking
Right.
infantry. But it makes sense because you wouldn't put like an infantry unit with an armor like unit. So like
Sure.
they have this weird hybrid, which is really just like I don't know, it's like a gross chimera. So like I make fun of Cav Scouts a lot.
Right.
And it's mostly because Cav Scouts in truth are pretty close to infantry, but they're not. And that small little distinction is what I want to rub in on them because that's what wounds them the most. Like they
Right.
really do feel like they do everything the infantry does, but they're not infantry, and like the infantry like won't let them in the club, and we fucking won't because they're not infantry. So yeah, that's my favorite. And then I make fun of people for being legs, like airborne units, and even like being you can go to airborne school. And where I come from, you're still a fucking leg. You're just a leg with wings. Because like
Oh,
if you weren't
sure.
on, you have to be on airborne status. Like you have to have been in a unit that was airborne. Because having wings just means that you went to a school. Like being in
Right.
an airborne unit, like that's the difference. And so yeah, I love that rivalry too. But I mean, the truth is like in the end, like veterans still like respect each other. I mean, if you were a fucking cook or something in a leg unit, I still proud of you for joining. I think it's good. Like I'm sure that you learned plenty of things in the military that made you better. But I'm gonna talk shit to you,
Right. Right.
probably.
And there's still that camaraderie to a certain extent of the shared
Sure.
experience and similar
Yeah.
experiences, I guess, not shared necessarily, but yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Anything you expected to me to ask that I didn't, or anything that we didn't even talk about that you want to throw out there?
Um. No, I mean, if you're if somebody listens to this and they're in, I'm very proud of them for it. I don't mean to say that when I was saying earlier, like if you want to join, don't. I think that the people that do join are always the better end of our society for the
Hmm.
most part. I mean, I went and joined with. There were some people that were like, go to war, go to jail. There were a
Right.
couple of kids
Right.
who like got in trouble and had to join, and probably shouldn't have. But for the most part, like it's really good people, and um, yeah. So if you're in, like, be proud of your service. Do your time, get out. If you're thinking about joining, apply the metric. If you really don't want to be in the fighting, if you really don't want to be a soldier, if you're in it for some other reason, go do something else. Like go pick up a trade in the military even. Like, but don't join the infantry. You're probably not gonna like it. But if you really want that taste of it, like, yeah, join the infantry, go airborne, don't be a leg. Yeah, that's I guess all I got, man. I don't know. I'm not full of a lot of sage wisdom today, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Anything you wanna plug or throw out there for anybody to
I
look into, or
I'm not really good at it. I mean, if I think if you have show notes or whatever, just link to my Twitter. I don't like to try to explain what my ad is. I've already had to
okay.
do that for others, and
I
I should have picked a better ad when I was making my Twitter account 13 years ago.
right.
But yeah, I mean, they can find me there, or digitaldropzone.com, if you want to see a neglected website. I don't think I've posted there in a year because I got writer's block really bad, and I won't give it up until I get into what I want to get into. But yeah, that's my only plugs.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any show notes, but if they do want to find you on Twitter, they can probably just look for Grunt Paw or Grunt Paw.
Grandpa, yeah,
Yeah, you should come up under that. So, yeah, cool. Appreciate it.
yeah, man.
Yeah, and also
Likewise.
if uh if anybody enjoyed what you had to say, you're on definitely on other shows out there, other podcasts. So look for that. The quality is guaranteed to be better than this show. as the average
Uh,
listener knows.
don't disparage the show, man. Don't do it. Like, no, this has been fun. I think you got a good thing going here. Yeah, I mean, I've been on other podcasts, but I like talking about this subject. This has been a good one. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
Me and Eric talked a little bit about Army. Like, he was Army. Like, we were both in Iraq. So we cover a few things. Like, I told a story about me getting in trouble for arson. Or I didn't perform arson, but I was accused of arson. So that's like near the end of that. So